Hello, and welcome to Practical Ideas for Growth. I am Sarah Dobek, and I am super excited to be joined today by Jeff Phillips. We have been hearing for a while now that recruiting and keeping talent in the accounting profession is a constant struggle, and the past 2 years have only made that challenge even more difficult, especially with the shift to remote work and the Great Resignation. But working with firms to connect with them with the right talent is something that you've been doing for a long time, Jeff. I know it's something you're really passionate about, and you're really tuned into what is going on in the market right now. So, welcome. We're excited to have you.
Hey, Sarah, it's really good to be here. It's great to be here.
Thanks. So, what's happening right now with the market and hiring?
Right. So where we're sitting right now is there's a lot of talk of the Great Resignation. I have a feeling that's going to be the buzz phrase of 2022. It's it's not it's not something to be ignored. It's real. So, but what is it? Um, so what has been happening in the public accounting labor market for decades is high turnover. We're really kind of structured for high turnover. But we started noticing in the last decade an increase in uptick 15, 20% for firms under $25 million. It goes down a little bit if you're above 20 million, but it's become more painful. And everybody that runs an accounting firm feels it. But what we're seeing in this sort of starting with the COVID-19 pandemic and the recovery from that is a greater increase of turnover. And great article we can put in the notes from The Verge called "Busy Season is Here, but Some Public Accountants Aren't." Gives a lot of background
Mhm.
on what is happening in our profession, but basically the various data points in that article are saying it's just way worse right now. So a lot of people are getting up to speed on remote work. I know we're going to talk about that. That's an important solution. But I think I can honestly say that what's going on in our labor market right now is we're walking into busy season 2022. There are more open positions than ever before. There's more concern about filling open positions than ever before. And yeah, there's ways to deal with it. There's some thinking outside the box that needs to happen, and I'm happy to talk about any of that.
Yeah, I love, and we're going to dig into that, right? We're going to dig a little of that thinking outside the box, but right, talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted this term, the Great Resignation, the turnover that profession's seeing, because this is not a new issue, right? And by the way, I keep saying every time we talk with somebody, we've known that this was coming for a long time, right? We knew what the numbers were coming out of schools, the number of people getting CPA camps. We knew how many boomers were in the market. We knew how much of the generation was coming behind. We knew what some of the pain points are. It doesn't make it any easier, right? It doesn't change the pain that we're living through right now and our firms are living through. But how has COVID exacerbated some of this, or what's the impact of that been on this
Yeah.
movement that's happening right now?
So starting with what things looked like before we walked into COVID, the value proposition for working in public accounting is is not going in the right direction, to put it kindly. Um, it's becoming less and less of attractive offer. This article I mentioned interviews a professor at Indiana's Kelley School of Business, who basically says that salary wages in the public accounting have stayed stagnant for 20 years, but the work has increased. Huge problem, right? And so you've got situations where like a junior accountant might be making $73,000 a year working 80-hour weeks when you could be a bank teller and work 55,000, make 55 a year, work 9 to 5 and get bank holidays and a fairly flexible life. So the value proposition's out of whack, and it is 90% for me about money and the business model of the firms and the revenue for the firms and more of it going into the staff. But okay, so then we get into COVID and two big trends that we've seen. One is people who thought they would stay in their careers and ride out for another decade retired early. And that happened at double the rate that any economist expected that to happen. Right? So that creates all kinds of openings. And the other one, this is more anecdotal, but we know that it's happening, is this people are rethinking their lives They're rethinking the ROI factor of their careers. And like a big wave of a trend that most trends happen slowly, this trend happened fast. People reconsidered, why am I doing what I'm doing? And you see this happening across an entire, not just accounting, but across our economy. But it is definitely in accounting, and we're seeing those turnover rates go pretty high.
Mhm. Wow. And I mean, I think we all know that we're all feeling it, right? COVID has taught us we can work from anywhere, right? And
Yes.
so that's opened a lot of doors too to that rethinking as well. But I want to imagine too, right, that there's been sort of an inverse in how it's also changed what firms are looking for in candidates. So what are you seeing that firms are maybe doing differently as they start to look at candidates and really just filling the gap on staffing?
There's the things that I wish firms were doing more of, Sarah, and there's things that we're seeing firms do,
Sure.
but so I founded Accountingfly, the recruitment company, and so we do staffing for accounting firms, but we only do remote. We are seeing a big uptick in contractor positions and part-time positions. So that's one way of coping with this. And I say that, the question was, what are they doing differently? What are they looking for differently? One thing firms are doing differently, looking for differently, is maybe my next hire isn't going to be this traditional fit inside of a box hire that I was used to. So some firms are doing that by hiring contractors. Some firms are doing that by hiring remote, or not caring where they live. Um, we're seeing some firms, but not many firms, get more aggressive with different benefits packages and flexibility packages and compensation packages, and they're winning. But I think mostly firms, the biggest shift I've seen is we've been talking about remote work for 5 or 6 years now. To see the top 50 firms who never would talk to anyone about remote work are now poaching candidates from traditional CPA firms for a fully remote job. Some really big names in our industry are doing that now. So I think what they're seeing is, we got to fill these seats. And if they're aggressive, they're willing to change their practices. They're willing to let go of sacred cows to make that happen. And the biggest one I'm seeing is probably remote.
Wow. So you said a little bit like benefits and comp without sharing names, obviously, but what are some of the unique things you're seeing in benefits or comp packages that seems to be winning right now?
Well, I want to give a sense of proportion. The comp is way more important, and I think we don't address that aggressively enough when we're talking on podcasts and LinkedIn Lives. This is a financial problem. It's a business model problem in the public accounting profession. It's a sacred cow of not paying the staff, and being okay with the turnover. I truly believe we've got to change and pay more aggressively. And there's a whole host of issues that comes with that. I get that, but you don't really have you don't have choice. You don't have a choice.
Mhm.
So it's not about, if we're just going to put a ping pong table in the break room, but pay everybody the same lousy wage, then everybody's going to be happy. That's not going to happen. So start by readdressing your comp from top to bottom. If that means raising prices, then raise your prices, raise your firm's prices. But that being said, benefits that we see that we get excited about are responsible PTO or unlimited PTO, work, big time flexible work arrangements where we have an office, but we don't really care if you work from home. Real loose on when you start and when you stop. We're just focused on the results, not the start and stop time. Look, anything that allows people to manage their lives and also have a career is the right answer. And this generation, unlike, probably our generation, they're not putting up with it because they don't have to. And to me, like, that's what this whole Great Resignation is about, is a whole a whole cluster of people just saying, no, no, thanks. If this doesn't work for me, and I'll go find that flexible, high paying opportunity that's market adjusted, and they're going to find it.
Mhm. Yeah. So remote work is obviously still a fairly new concept for the profession. I know some firms were, leading edge or bleeding edge on this stuff, but for the most part, the adoption over the last 2 years, forced by COVID, still makes this pretty new. what would you say to firms that haven't embraced this concept yet?
I think if you don't have remote as part of your strategy, you will never win your war for talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're there. And here's why. And let's define it. Remote doesn't mean hire in your market and let people work from home. Remote means I don't care where you work. Your location is not something we're considering in the selection process. And that can be for staff, and that can be for managers, and that can be for seniors, and it can be for partners, and it can be for controllers and CFOs. And so that's remote work. It starts there. And the reason why you would do that is, let's say you're a firm in Tulsa and you have an opening, and your firms are growing, Sarah. I mean, the professional's really doing well right now. So if it's growing, it means it needs to hire more capacity. That means everybody's hiring. So is our friends on the industry side of the house. So there's all this demand. If you're in Tulsa and you draw a loop around every CPA in Tulsa, that's a finite number, like 500 or 600, I don't know, 1,000. Would you rather find the best candidate in a pool of a 500 or in a pool of 670,000? And that's when you expand out throughout the United States. So one, you're going to find the best player for the position if your comp is right and your benefits are right and you have a great culture. Two,
Mm-hmm.
your time to fill will probably go down from 18 months to 40, 45 days. And I have just hundreds of stories of where this has worked well, even for first time CPA firms who just said, let's just try this. Let's hire the right person outside of our market.
Yeah. And you said something really key, and this is a conversation I'm having a lot, and I'm sure you are too, right? How do you handle the comp, right?
Yeah.
If they're in a different market, if they're in a, if I'm hiring somebody in, a market that theoretically the cost of living is lower, do I get to pay that person lower? The answer is always no. Your comp ranges need to be based on your work, your firm, what the going rate is in the market, not state specific, right? And that's not always a popular answer. I hear what you're saying. We're still going to do what we're doing. Kind of look sometimes, which I think takes a minute, right, to figure that out when you're handling remote. But the firms on the coast really have the biggest advantage because they're not going to adjust their comp usually, and they're usually bringing in people at much higher rates, which I think is going to be a huge challenge for firms that are trying to retain people in the middle of the country or in areas that it's going to be more challenging, which is then integrating right into the pricing. And I won't take us down that rabbit hole today, which is a passion topic of mine. So
Mine too. But you're right. The firms on the coasts are setting the wage levels.
mm-hmm.
And that's happening because Los Angeles-based firms are taking managers out of top 200 firms in Nebraska and Ohio and Michigan and Kansas. And so these folks are getting 40%, 50%, 60% raises, going to work from their home desk and working for the California firm. So no, the answer isn't you get a discount for remote. Now, when we were doing remote hiring in 2018, you got a discount because it was such a luxurious perk. But the market is the market. It's not your emotional reaction to the market. And the market is based off the wages that are paid by the coastal firms across the country. And it is what it is.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how we find talent today, because that's the other big pain point. And on the marketing side, we do a lot with our firms on the employer branding and marketing, supporting recruiting efforts. But, we probably said for a while, and I think I know the answer to this question, but is posting an open position enough really? Is that enough in today's environment?
No. And I worked for monster.com, as you know, for 7 years. I understand the job board market maybe better than anyone in the country. And we job boards were not very good at hiring accountants in 2007. But you can try. And if you're going to try, look at LinkedIn. They have a good product, and Indeed and ZipRecruiter. But what you're going to get is you're going to get a lot of noise, and you're going to have to put a lot of hours of just winnowing down the large bucket of volume of candidates you get to anything that's decent. it's not very effective. And probably everybody that's watching this has tried to hire, has posted a job, and has gotten very frustrated. And for all these reasons, so, you're going to get you're going to get some great civil engineers, maybe some good teachers, maybe a bartender, librarian. You're not going to see a lot of CPAs apply for jobs online.
Oh my gosh, it is crazy to me. So we're fully remote, right? We're not a CPA firm, but we're fully remote. And our problem is wading through the quantity of emails. We had a marketing associate and a project coordinator position open recently. I think we had 900, almost 1,000 applications for a marketing associate position, and at least 500 for the project coordinator. Yeah, we had a lot of noise in there that was junk that did not even come close. But our biggest issue was getting through the resumes to narrow to a subset of candidates. And comparative to, right, I see firms post for, it's a manager position or a senior staff position in a firm, and we're lucky if we get 20 applications, especially for a smaller firm who doesn't have the same resources, right, that some of the larger firms have to do some of that, employer branding that I mentioned before. And so what do you think it's going to take for firms today to compete, right? If job postings aren't working,
Yeah.
what do you think is going to be needed to get the attention and capture that attention for firms?
There's a lot to it. I mean, one, I think everything we've talked about has led up to this point. You ought to have a great employer brand, and that's what people say about your firm behind their back, and if behind your back. But if they're saying nothing, or if it's undefined, you can define it. But that's what you're great at, Sarah, and your team is helping put that into the market. That's like the base, is that there's a good brand there. But we know firms that have made a full commitment to 40-hour work week during tax season. Real firms. Advisio, which used to be Hartman Blackman Kilgore, our good friend Dennis Sharon, they're a case study in this. And I had lunch with Dennis last week, and it's going great. So it takes things like that to get people's attention. You're obviously going to have to pay at the top of the market. So accounting firms do not have your problem of how much time do I have to allocate to weed through 900 resumes. You're not going to get the resumes. So search partners like Accountingfly are invaluable right now, and our business has never been better because of the challenges. And you've got to find some trusted partners, and there's a lot of good professional recruiting organizations out there that know how to go and find those candidates. It takes thousands of hours of research to go uncover one lead, and you probably have to get hundreds of those to turn it into 3 offers, because we now have to get every job basically has to have 3 offers, because so many people are like accepting offers and then turning them down or no showing on the first day of work, that you almost have to have 3 to every one job you want to fill. And that's true for our search firm, because even though it costs us far more, right, to fill one job, we now have to generate 3 offers. That's just the nature of this wild market that we're in right now. But those are some of my thoughts.
Wow. Well, I know we wish we probably had a lot more time to keep talking. We could probably talk all afternoon on this, but thank you so much for joining us, Jeff, and sharing some of your insights on what's going on in the market right now. We greatly appreciate you.
Thank you. If I could leave one thing, get organized and act fast. If you respond to candidates after 24 hours, chances are one of your competitors has already responded. It's not pleasant, but it is factual. You got to get back to people really fast. So get organized around your recruiting. But thank you. Thanks for letting me be here, Sarah. It's always good to see you, and thanks for talking about this important topic.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.